Nice.
You barely drink your water, man. You don't need much water.
No. No, I'll have to take a piss halfway through. I've already had 2 things of water, a protein shake,
shit.
2 coffees.
Yeah, man. You're always up working out early.
Yeah.
6 a.m.
I have to, man.
Yeah.
Got to get it in or else I'm never going to. I worked out last night at like 8 o'clock. But I couldn't get it in yesterday.
Yeah. My gym's just opened up, but someone actually set my gym on fire. So freaking closed, man. Yeah. Pissed off.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, gym's just opened up.
Yeah.
And then someone wants to go set it on fire.
That's ridiculous. Only in Hamilton.
Right? I'm like, fuck, man. Honestly, I haven't made like any gym progress in probably like a year just because it's been like so on and off.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working out at home. Like, that shit feels like useless as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. It is. And that was my mindset. I never wanted to do anything unless it was at a gym.
Yeah.
But then, with the whole COVID and then having 3 kids, it was really next to impossible to get out.
Yeah.
To the gym.
Honestly.
And the local gym in my area, it's like, it's like the shower's like a regular bathroom.
Okay.
So you feel like you're showering at somebody's house. I don't know.
That is kind of weird.
Yeah, it is weird. I'm like, oh God. And nobody's there. You walk in, you're like, am I waking somebody up at like 6 a.m.? Like, it's open. He's obviously woken up and like,
Yeah.
He also had his dog there too. I'm like, I can't work out and breathe in like dog dander. Like what?
Dog dander?
Yeah. Like what?
Dander, that's a cool word. I haven't heard that word. Dander.
It's like all that, like greasy feeling from a dog, and it's like,
fuck, man, I wish I had a dog. I never had a dog before.
Yeah, you don't want them.
Why not? I'm more of a cat guy, to be honest, but even my cat hates me.
Well, I have 2 dogs, and I don't like them.
Well, you got...
Yeah, I don't like them. 2
dogs, 3 kids. And you have a whole real estate team. What's going on here, man? Like, where's the alone time?
I get enough of it. I travel for work a lot, so
yeah. Man, traveling here, I honestly thought I was gonna be late, stuck in traffic on the 403. Wasn't moving at all. Probably stayed in the same spot for like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I got a random phone call. Answer the call. No, there's a woman pitching me on the phone. I was like, oh my God. I let her down easy. I was like, listen, like, I'm in traffic right now. I don't got time for this. Then she just hung up, like right away. She hung up, and I was like, okay. So I'm young and petty. I went to my recent phone calls. I clicked on like the little eye with a circle, send message. I sent her a little laughing emoji, but like the sideways one to kind of like be a little salty.
Yep.
And then like, I don't know, what would you rate that person's like sales skills from like your point of view? 0? What should have done after I said like, I'm busy, like, call back maybe in like an hour or so?
Yeah, I would have said, hey, look, you know what? I can appreciate that. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a shout at around 4:15. Does that work for you? No, it doesn't. Okay, well, what about tomorrow morning at 9:30, 9:45? Try to offer odd times, 15:45. Helps them to remember.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a trust what you say because you're the best realtor out in the GTA Niagara region. I mean, the demand for you is so high. Like every time I see you on social media, you're on a podcast, you're creating content. Like why is the demand for Andrew Perrie so high, do you think?
Well, I just think it's because that I do put a lot out there, and it's usually, I think, some type of valuable content. But I also feel that I spend a lot of time, like I was watching a podcast with you and Sam Mealy, and you talked about networking. That's literally how I built my business from the very beginning, was networking. And I've taken the time to build those relationships with so many different people from, all over the world, basically, that people understand that by the time I get on their podcast or interview or blog or whatever, that they know that my fan base is going to help get that podcast a little more views, because my fan base, and it's so weird to call it fan base, it's not really what I mean, but they typically have a little bit more buy-in or intention with watching the podcasts, and more likely to share or like or comment because you've built those relationships, and it's all really down to networking.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to get into it.
Starting the show?
Yeah, I mean, natural intro.
Awesome.
Fuck it. Yeah, so I want to get into like the superstar realtor side of you, because I know you've told me before pretty well known that most of your business is like 80% referral.
Yeah.
I'd love to dive into that, but let's kind of take it back to the start before any of this even happened. I mean, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
So technically, I was born in Newmarket. And then, we lived in Aurora until I was like 5 or 6 or 7 or something like that. But I really grew up in a town called Innisfil, just 15 minutes south of Perrie, Ontario. So at the time it was, country. I only had 200 people that lived in the immediate area, connected to another town that maybe had 1,000, and very small town, driving snowmobiles, trucks, ice fishing, wakeboarding, snowboarding, 'cause it's right close to Horseshoe Valley. So that typical kind of rural lifestyle, that's how I grew up.
Damn, I'm pretty sure it was called Innisfil.
Yeah, Innisfil.
I'm pretty sure that everyone that doesn't live outside in Innisfil calls it Innsville, because that's like, I'm pretty familiar with the word Innsville. That sounds familiar.
Well, there's two.
Okay.
That one's close to like St. Thomas and like London area. And then Innisfil is the town. It's almost like, how Hamilton has Stony Creek, has Waterdown. Innisfil has Stroud, Alcona, Churchill, and I grew up in Churchill.
Okay, cool. I mean, small town. I grew up in a small town before I actually moved to Hamilton. Yeah. Very small town, probably like 1,000 people. I mean, everybody knows everybody in the town. I mean, do you even like remember kind of what that environment was like back then?
Yeah, it was really fun. But I mean, also very, it's scary too, because, everybody knows everything about each other, even if it's a lie or if it's true. So you say one thing in high school as a kid, that can blow up to where everybody in the high school and then spreads into the adjoining towns and knows that rumor about you. So you'd be surprised how many, people in Barrie, 20 minutes north, will know something about me that I was like, how the hell did you find that out? For one, that's not even true. But, so that's kind of the downside of living in a small town. But you know what, the positives, which is something that I think about to this day, is that how close we all were. And, I think about how many 600, 1,000 people, 600 students, I think we had in our high school. And that was like with 5 towns combined. And, we really did know each other, and we had those relationships with everybody. And, I wish we had some type of high school reunion, but we never ended up doing. But it's great to see all those people again.
Man, you're the guy that's supposed to set up the high school reunion now.
Funny you said that. I was actually on the admin page I was the admin of the Facebook page, Nantyre Shores Reunion 10 years. And now it's been 20 years and nothing's happened.
Yeah, man.
Honestly, 20 years since I've been in high school, basically. Yeah, 21 years.
Yeah, I probably won't go to my high school reunion unless I'm like super successful and I can just like flex on everybody that doubted me. Yeah. But okay, you grew up in Innisfil, sorry. Innisfil, yeah. Two of them. What's kind of like the circumstance you kind of found yourself in growing up as like a young boy? What were you starting to like understand of your own situation?
Well, so here's the thing. Our family, we were just kind of like average income, looking back at the time, my stepdad did make really decent money. But we were always the family, like we never bought new cars because they didn't want to finance. He wanted to own everything, which makes total sense. But at the same time, we never, it wasn't like we were rich, but it also wasn't like we were poor. In Churchill, we were known as like I wouldn't say like the higher up place to live, but like, larger lots, estate style homes. Our house was only like 1,400 square feet. So they're like the smallest house in the subdivision. So it wasn't like, we were hard to do or anything like that, but it was very interesting how everybody kind of had the same lifestyle in the immediate town. Like we're all friends, we all hung out, but there wasn't like a lot to do. So what do you do when there's not a lot to do? You try to make your own fun. So we would snowmobile in our town, rip around on the sleds with our snowboards. We'd skateboard. We'd play road hockey. We'd play ice hockey. We'd go fishing. Typically a lot of drinking growing up, and because that's what you would do, right?
Country music, drinking, any of that?
Honestly, growing up, we didn't really listen to a lot of country music. Now those guys do. I'm not really into it so far. But no, I was like a big emo guy. So I listened to like a lot of emo music. they listen to like rap. Like I say they, because all my best buddies were, although we're so tight, I was always the one who's like the oddball, who's different from everybody else. Although I tried very hard to fit in, it was very difficult because I liked all this different shit. So yeah, growing up was very interesting, and that's why, you know, I am where I am now, and you know, a lot of my friends stayed where they are. Not like there's anything wrong with that. It just proves that how different I was from them in the end.
You said something interesting there, as in you were trying to fit in to, you know, be like the other people you were hanging around. That's like kind of familiar with me because I recently came out of high school a couple years ago, and that's like all high school is, you know, people want to be with the cool kids and stuff. And then like I was one of the people that like quickly realized that, you know, I don't really like care about being in the popular groups or anything of that nature. But like, when did you become comfortable with that feeling and realize that you don't, you know, you're not trying to be like everybody else?
Well, that honestly wasn't until recently, and that's the truth. So I'll tell everybody, like growing up, but I still kind of do it now that I'm bringing this story up, because I would adapt to who I was hanging around. Like we had the smokers, we had the fighters, we had the sports guys, we had the drama people, we had the, you know, intellects. So depending on which group I was hanging out, because I hung out with them all. I was in drama all 4 years. I played hockey. I was on the golf team. I hung out with all the jocks, even though I didn't play football, because all the jocks were my boys. And I, you know, listened to rap. I partied. So I was with kind of everybody, but I would always adapt to the environment that I was in. And I still do that. It's, you know,
Is that actually a strength?
Maybe it is now that I think about it, because at the time, all my buddies would be like, you know, we're all really, really close friends, but you're the one who's always going out and meeting new people. You're always, you know, blah, blah, blah. One day you've got your studded belt and your black hair, and the other day you've got your New York ball cap, you know, down like Jay-Z on top of your eyes. And I was just never drawn to only one thing. And now I think in the sales environment, you know, when I'm representing clients, I would love to just wear a t-shirt and jeans and maybe this cotton blazer that I'm wearing now. Some of my clients, I know that they expect a certain level, so I'll show up in a suit. Some of them I'm showing 50-acre farms to, so I'll show up in my redhead tall boots and my flannel jacket. And it's not that I'm trying to be somebody I'm not. I'm trying to make them feel more comfortable in the person that they've hired. And I think that stems from, you know, what we were just talking about down in high school. For
sure. That reminds me of a book I read. I think Ryan Serhant, Sell Like Serhant. He talks a lot about like playing the part in that book, and and that seems as if like you kind of figured that out, maybe not intentionally, kind of right away.
Yeah, exactly. Because I went through a very serious sales introduction in my life in my mid-20s when I joined LA Fitness, and it was, you had to shave. You had to shave, you had to wear the shirt, you had to wear slacks, and you had to wear these shoes. To eventually, I was so bought into that by the time I started my real estate career, I was trying to still portray that side of you know, being well presented, shaving, and I just hated it. I hated it, but I still continued to do it because I thought that's what was going to, you know, help me wake up and get me into the right mindset. And then I slowly realized as I started making more money and I started becoming more comfortable, and I started to not have business come to me, but through my level of success, that's kind of what I can expect now, that there is a certain amount of business that comes to me. And the reason why it comes to me is because, you know, it's people that are basically watching me on social media and feel like they know me already. So it's almost like a pre-qualification by the time they get to me. And I just feel like now I can kind of be myself. And when I made that distinction, I've, you know, kind of started to level up my growth. But again, there's still some clients that you've got to do exactly what Ryan Serhant says, where he's got to, you know, play that part just in order to get the deal done or to land the client too.
For sure. 100%. I mean, I really like how you worded that. I mean, the power of just being yourself.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of edging in on like the real estate salesperson side of you. This guy can't stop talking about sales. Yeah. I kind of want to take it back. What were you like interested in before the sales part? Like, did you have any like other ambitions as a young teen coming up in the world?
Yeah, so from 14, I was in a band and up until my mid 20s. And I left university because we went on tour with some really big names. We traveled, we recorded, we had all of these prospects lined up. And, I really thought that I was going to be in the music industry for the rest of my life. And then when my band broke up, I started to get bigger and bigger breaks, and I was starting to sing like rock vocals on rap music, Harvey Stripes, Captain Hooks, Lil Jakes, Carl Wolf. And I was with this group of people, Class 21 Records. Captain Hooks is now Monaco Lights, by the way, if anybody knows him who's watching the show. And, we record in the same studio as Drake, Jacob from Headley, the guy, his name's Prologic. He's a massive producer out of Toronto, and now he's like in LA and all this other good stuff. So I literally, as I left the band, I was getting literally bigger. I was signing contracts, doing deals. I was supposed to go to Dubai for 6 months, and then we had some legal trouble. We can talk about that. I don't really care. I'm an open book. Most people know about it. But that's literally what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be a musician. I was going to be a pop star. It was going to be fantastic, and I was going to be famous and rich.
I mean, it sounds like from how you just put it, you had like momentum behind you. I mean, you're in the studios, big artists were recording in. It seems like you're still kind of in touch with like kind of where people kind of ended up. But let's talk about the Dubai thing. You're supposed to go to Dubai for 6 months. I mean, what happened there?
So it's probably the only podcast that I've, especially in the recent years, that I've actually talked about this, because it's a different story that a lot of, but I have talked about this publicly. I've put it on my, I put this on my my Facebook wall, and I had a couple of people reach out. It's like, oh, I don't know if I'd let people know, but yeah, I'll explain. Like, I've lived and I've learned. I've had such a crazy life, especially in 15 to 27, where I got a DUI. And it was when I was a kid. I was maybe 19 or 20 or something. And, it was the biggest mistake of my life. And I spent, the night in jail. I got my license taken away. But I was fighting it for certain reasons. And again, the reason why I don't want to get into that side of things is because, like drinking and driving is a very serious offense, and there's no excuse for what happened. But however, the way it did happen, there was it was worth me to fight it, and we did fight it and we won. But that fight, I was going to court and I couldn't leave the country. Actually, technically I could leave the country, but my court date fell within the Dubai contract. So I said, okay, I'll sign the contract. I'll come to Dubai. I'll do the shows, shows like every night at a very famous hotel, and I'll leave, go back to do the court date, and then I'll come back. And they said, no, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? She's like, that's breaking the contract. I'm like, put it in the contract. Then I'm leaving for like 3 days, and then I'll come back. And they're like, no, you're like, just miss the court date. I'm like, what do you mean just miss the court date? I'm like, I'll get fucking thrown in jail. And he's like, no, you'll be fine. They'll just rebook it. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. So we basically ripped up the contract of me, and I had a going away party and everything. Like, this was like a few days before. So I ripped it up, and, I went to the court date. I won, and, the rest is history there. But I was banned from that company sending me to Dubai ever again.
Wow. Crazy story.
Yeah.
Life of like a, teenage rock star at the time, maybe made some minor bad decisions.
Absolutely. But that's the way I felt. I felt like I was a rock star, and I felt like I was above a lot of my own actions, and it didn't. And everybody asked me, well, if you love music and if that's what you thought you're going to do, why didn't you continue it? And I realized that as I was getting older and I wasn't making any money, it wasn't the music that I was passionate about. It was the recognition, the fame, and the money that I was passionate about. And I wasn't getting any of those. My recognition was dwindling, and I certainly wasn't getting paid.
So let's get into that. Although you were like, had momentum behind you, you felt like you're on top of the world. People were kind of paying attention to you. You had the recognition. You were broke at that time?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I did. I flaunted like I wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I mean,
at the bars and the clubs. Right. But yeah, no, I was certainly broke, but it was, you got to think of the music industry as like one big internship. Eventually your dues will come, your dues that you've paid will pay off. And just for me, it was taking too long, and I was getting older, and I started a job with LA Fitness, and it was taking, precedent a lot, because in LA Fitness, you got to work 6 days a week, which at the time I was like, that's crazy. But then when you get into sales and you really find a passion for it, I wanted to work 7 days a week. I was there 14 hours a day, only clocking in for 10 because I loved it so much. So again, it wasn't about the music. Because, I get random Facebook messages from people from high school or in my 20s, like, Andrew, it's too bad you didn't stick with music. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, I could tell you had a passion for it. I'm like, yeah, I did, but it wasn't that. I wanted money. And now that I'm making more money than probably 99% of the musicians out there right now, I'm enjoying my life. And now if I want to go pick up the guitar and play it at a pub or around the campfire, I can.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into that, because the LA Fitness, was your first introductory into the sales business, it seems.
Well, I did, I was a head bartender. I did, I worked at a retail shop, but all my life was like a lot of like landscaping, general labor. Friggin' hated it, obviously. But yeah, that was my first actual, let me meet you, let me sell you, and let's create a relationship. That was my first experience. But it was an everlasting experience that helped me basically be able to design and create systems in my own business. Now, that's why I'll get random messages from my team, or my team members will call me. They're like, I need the Andrew Perrie verbiage, because they'll get themselves into a situation like, how the hell do I talk myself out of this? And, I'll provide, it's not a manipulation. It's not influence. It's not lying. It's you're creating, okay, look, you've got to take yourself out of the situation, find what the person across the table from you wants, and really get creative on how your vocabulary is being perceived. And so that's all it is. And I learned that at LA Fitness.
It seems like life after the DUI, you became humbled, as, maybe all men need to go through.
Yeah.
But, it seems like you realized you wanted more. Like you said, you wanted the money, but of course with building a real estate, team empire, like you're on your way to doing, you need to have certain attributes that you maybe need to attain, perseverance, self-discipline, patience. And those are kind of traits you need to practice before you actually can portray them every single day. So, assuming you're kind of in this time where you're wanting to grind it out, get the money, what were you kind of doing to build on those characteristic traits before you can go any further?
That's a good question, because it took a lot, because I didn't have any self-discipline, and I wouldn't call it rock bottom by any means, but I was broke. I was partying all the time. I wasn't really living any type of healthy lifestyle. And then I got into the sales role where I was still trying to balance that, where now I was making money so I could pay for the party lifestyle, but then it would affect my sales. And then eventually the burning desire, I have a fairly addictive personality, but once you find those positive things to get addicted to, they start overweighing the negatives. So what was I doing in order to help keep me motivated? I was reading a lot, working out a lot, and eating healthy. Those were the three main contributors, as well as, the biggest contributor, and nothing to my boys, they probably are not going to watch this anyways, but my close friends were my brothers. I didn't have any brothers until I was about 15 is when I had my first sibling, 14 in and around there. And we were always so tight, but I was the one who was always willing to leave the hometown, chase my dreams, chase the money, chase the opportunities. So that's a very, very important factor, is that while I was going through this growth, and for anybody who's out there going through, your problems, if you're going through this growth, spurt, you're probably noticing that you don't have things in common with your friends anymore. You don't have, you're not partying on the weekend while they are. You're not smoking in a garage, throwing darts, no offense, when you're at home studying, or you're working out, or you're putting in more time in lead generation. So if you're starting to experience that, it's time to move on. Get yourself an apartment in a town where you don't know anybody, or that's far enough away where you can still conduct your business wherever it is, where it makes sense, or take that job opportunity in London, Ontario. Take that job opportunity in BC. You don't want to be so far isolated from everybody that you can't fulfill those needs of seeing your loved ones, but at the same time, you have to go into seclusion and work on you first, for sure. And if I didn't work on me, then I would have just, spent all my money that I was making on sales and probably eventually get fired.
I mean, I like how we got into, taking big risks just in, in trade for growth. I mean, that's huge. Absolutely. Especially getting into real estate when you probably first got your real estate license. I mean, that's huge risk people may perceive it as well. I mean, not having a check every single 2 weeks, you're really only relying on yourself to go get those sales to actually get commission. I mean, back then in your life, I mean, I'm not sure how old were you when you first got your license, but kind of what was the atmosphere kind of in your head on, actually working to get paid? Because I mean, clearly the money was meant a lot to you back then.
Right. So I only got my license 5 years ago, by the way.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I've built now, 100 million sales volume business in a matter of 5 years.
Wow.
And grew 2 offices and 8 team members and 2 admins. So it's a very quick growth. I'm a director with Revel Realty as well now. And it was just, it was just one of those things where you have to take those risks, because even before I got my license, I quit the corporate job with LA Fitness that I was, worked so hard to get. And my son was 2 months old, and we moved back from Edmonton to Ontario, and we started the real estate business. And I just took the year off not the year off, but like the 6 months that it took to get licensed. And I just focused on the course, focused on my son and my family, and, focused on meeting people, doing podcasts, writing blogs, meeting entrepreneurs, and just learning as much as I could about the business. So that was a huge risk. And then again, coming into the industry, I realized that there's a certain type of sales that I wanted to do. I wanted to do luxury sales, and I wanted to sell in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And everybody told me that was an incredible risk, because there's only a low percentage of people that can actually do those types of sales. The others, focus on the larger pool, which is, your 300, 500. Now in 2022, your 700 or your $800,000 houses, which sell super, super quick. Where I was only interested in selling the bigger fish, as well as the larger, the market in Niagara-on-the-Lake is so small. Right. So you've really got to beat out all these bigger fish, because there's only a handful of agents. And so I'm still working on that. But that was a big risk. Opening my own office was a big risk when I, didn't even have, I had some decent coin behind me, but, it was still a big risk, taking on a large rent payment plus all the marketing expenses. Then, a few months later, opening the second office. I've just always been that way. I bought my house when I first got licensed, and I hadn't even made a commission check yet. So how's that for risky when you've got a kid and you just bought a house and you haven't even got your first paycheck yet?
I mean, that doesn't even really make sense to me. So how did it make sense to you?
Because I knew, here's the biggest mistake, is a lot of people get into real estate because they see what it's like and say, oh, wow, look at that. Then they get in the industry and they're like, well, where do I get the leads? I thought does the brokerage give you leads? No. What the hell are you talking about? Does brokerage give you leads? No. So, our brokerage does give leads, by the way, but the conversion rates are very low. And I knew that wasn't how you succeed in business. I knew that I have everything I need in order to become successful in real estate. I've got a knuckles for door knocking. I've got my business card right here. I don't need a Andrew Perrie Revel 905-380. I've got my handshake. I've got a lasting impression on people so they know me. And I knew that as long as I have that mentality, I was not worried. Like, I never even thought, I guess I was a little nervous about closing and getting the down payment, but it never crossed my mind that I wasn't going to be able to achieve what I already spent so much time, setting myself up for. So I was scared, yes, but at the same time, it's one of those things that just, it pushes you. There's no other option. What are you going to do? Foreclose on the house and get sued and be owed more money, and now your family has nowhere to go and you look like a loser in front of everybody? No, I'm not going to let that happen, right? So I think if people took more risks like that, they'll be so much farther along. Because if there's no plan B, you have no other option. Like Eminem says, and I've said this in so many motivational videos, is like, success is the only option, failure is not. Right?
Do you think people, realtors, anybody for that matter should take on that same risk, you know, buying a house before they really even have the.
No. If there's somebody that I know and again, the answer is no. I couldn't tell anybody to do that.
That's just like something that's crazy you kind of do on your own. Everyone has like that crazy thing.
Well, I just know that there's thousands of deals being done every year, and all I would need necessarily to close on that house is 3 or 4 deals. That's all I'll need. So that's a pretty manageable goal, especially because the closing was 6 months. So I had 6 months to get 4 sales. And then from there, how is I going to maintain the $2,000 a month mortgage payment? Well, I would need at least 14 in my first year. I did 17 in my first year. So I surpassed it, but not crazy. We've done 17 deals this year already. So the level of growth, I think, is matched by the level of risk that you take.
I like that. 5 years ago, though, getting your real estate license, I mean, I honestly thought you've been in the business for like, you know, at least 10 to 15. I thought you maybe got in like your early 20s, something like that.
2017.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. So what expedited your career in terms of like the beginning? What were you kind of taking part in?
Well, I saw a huge value in video marketing. That was the biggest thing, because video marketing hadn't necessarily came to the real estate industry in Niagara. It was in the GTA for sure, but I took that and just ran with it. And if you ever go back to my first video that I released on Andrew Perrie Real Estate on Facebook, I can't remember what video it was on YouTube because I did some music video stuff before, but that one was like, it was a very funny video. You know, I was like Michael Scott from The Office, drinking my world's best boss cup, and I get up and I'm looking out the window and it's a nice sunny day. And they zoom down and I'm in my Toronto Maple Leaf boxers, but I've got a dress shirt on. And then, you know, I'm boxing with a full suit on. And it was just one of those videos that somebody was like, that's funny. If I saw that now, I'd be like, ugh. Buddy, hang up the camera gear and, you know, focus on something else. But it was new, it was fresh, and, you know, we took the risk of coming out with that. And, you know, I did a follow-up of a few other funny videos that helped bring people in. And that was the goal. I knew I had to get as much eyes on me as possible in a short amount of time if I wanted to become successful. So a lot of my first year deals came from agent to agent referrals from other agents. And when they found out I was only in the business 1 year, they were very surprised as well, but they're thankful that I helped their clients. That's for sure.
One thing I think in a recent podcast of yours, I heard you say is you don't market yourself to the people, you market yourself to other realtors. Can you kind of explain what that means? Here's
the thing. You're not ever going to get a lead directly from a post. Hey, if you're a buyer or seller, make sure you give me a call. Or, hey, we are looking for sellers. I mean, you might get the one-off, but the ROI on that type of marketing content is so low, it's insane, especially these days. Might have worked in the 80s and 90s, you know, call now and get your free home evaluation, but it just doesn't work that way anymore. And, of course, we still do those style of ads, but we don't, like, I don't post that on my personal Instagram, none of that. So it's all about building content that, you know, matches your personality, that's not too far out from what you think your buyers and sellers and clients and network would like to see. So then I realized that after, you know, focusing on buyers and sellers, my videos were like 1,000 views, no comments. And then I started, you know, offering advice to realtors on simple graphic design tips, video marketing tips, what CRMs to use. And I was getting a much higher engagement rate. So I'm like, there's something here. There's something here. So I switched up. I wouldn't necessarily call it switched up. I just focused more on providing value to other realtors and business owners, that so much so that it just helped solidify my spot in people's heads when they're thinking Niagara real estate. And now Muskoka, where as soon as I released the news that I came in and partnered up on Muskoka, I had 3 leads right away. One was for $3 million buy and 2 were waterfront listings. It's like, wow, so I can replicate this process in any market, because it's not because the agents that are referring to me are like, oh, I just want to work with Andrew because he's popular. It's not that at all. You know, even though I'm in a market that I don't necessarily sell in, they know that their clients are going to be taken care of because they see my results. You can't maintain this level of results and growth if your clients hate you. Right? There are some very, very large teams that do 2,000 deals a year, $1,500 or 1,500 transactions a year. But like, those people have been in the business 30, 40 years. They've got marketing budgets of 500 grand a month. They're just turning it over. Where, no, I can't do that. I can't afford that. I have to have a good relationship with our clients, and I've got to provide an amazing experience so the people that do see me want to refer to me again. And I put that in my content. I let clients give testimonials. I show exactly how we do things behind the scenes, how we pass off referrals behind the scenes, and we film it and we put it on the internet. And people are like, why are you letting all your clients see inside your business when you're talking so openly about each situation? And I said, that's exactly why I've had the success that I've had, because people know there's full transparency with us. There's no bullshit. And hey, you know, sometimes they like to get featured on the show too.
Yeah. It's really obvious that like you pioneered your career through social media.
Yes.
With video content. I mean, I'm on my Instagram every single time I refresh the feed. It seems like Perrie's at the top of my feed pushing content. I mean,
yes.
A part of me is thinking, how is this guy like pumping out so much different types of content? And with that, you also have, people to pay for that, like the videographers, stuff of that nature. I mean, to get that capital to even, start considering pushing as much content as you are is not the easiest for some people. So how would like, say like a realtor or someone trying to build a business with very little capital go about that kind of thing, pushing video content that looks professional?
Yeah. So if I were to give advice, there's one of two trains of thought, and I don't really think about the first one anymore. When I first started those videos, I filmed myself. I bought a Panasonic G7. I filmed it. The problem with that is that you spend way too much time editing to focus on sales. And you really do, even if it's a very simple edit. So what I would do is even try to find yourself a $500 budget. $1,000 be a little bit more appropriate. Anything above that obviously is great. But if you're on a budget, $500 a month, hook up with a videographer and just do one day, 3 outfits, multiple locations, and have them all be 15 to 30, maybe a minute long. So that $500 should get you at least 10 Instagram reels, and you can, and then you can, I would hope, and you can post twice a week. At least start pushing that out so people know, like, wow, it looks like a $10,000 video shoot, and it's really only cost you $500 because it's only 30-second clips. A videographer, and then once you get down to it, we had our videographer came and followed us down Niagara on the Lake. We pumped out 9 videos in 45 minutes. All I did, and that was us not even having a plan. So if you have a plan and you've got your system down, you can replicate that. So, example, you've got that $500 budget that I talked about. Bring the videographer down a strip where there's tons of businesses. Walk into the business, talk about the business, walk into the business, buy a product, talk to the owner, talk to whoever's there, come out of the store, talk about the business, tell them where to find them. Boom. Now you've got not only your audience, but the business's audience. You've also got video content. You've got a product selection. And then as well as you've got some FaceTime. So people are going to appreciate that, and they're going to see that it's professional. But if you focus on like, oh man, I don't have a $3,000 a month budget for a videographer to come once a week, you definitely do not need that. Once a month, and try to pump out 10 videos.
Wow, this guy's giving out a lot of free game for anyone looking to start a business.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever think about, you're obviously in the service business. Yeah. Did you ever think about starting a product business? Any thoughts around that, or not really?
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, here's the problem. I get pitched all the time to build a course and to write a book. And I've been slowly writing a book, which is a mix of kind of what we've talked here today, plus, it's very similar to Orion Serhant's style, because him and our styles are very similar. I mean, I wouldn't hop on a flight and fly to, where did he fly to? Paris, and like met one of his buyers to get a signature. I'm not gonna lie, I probably wouldn't do that. I think it's the opening story in Sell It Like Sarah Hunt, by the way, if anybody's wondering where I got that story from. But no, I mean, I wouldn't, I don't know, man. It's interesting. It's just, I don't know if I have the credibility yet. And people keep asking me, I'm like, man, I don't think I've got that level yet. And they're like, dude, you have, or you don't need to. So, I mean, building a course is number one, packaging that with a book. But I mean, my ultimate goal is to sell my speaking services as well eventually. Like we started to do that, then COVID happened. I've got another, a speaking gig in Mississauga, March 13th or 14th, I believe.
I didn't pay him for this, by the way.
Yeah.
That is crazy, man. I mean, I definitely think you have the reputation to actually come out with a product, whether that be a book or a course. I mean, there's tons of courses out there though, where it's just like some bullshit, someone trying to sell you on something that's their actual form of income. But I mean, if you did this in 5 years and you really have the A to Z on it, I mean, why not? I mean, I think that's a perfect idea. Yeah, and a lot of people know you. I mean, I know people in Hamilton, like young realtors like me, that know you that you probably don't even know you. Right.
And so that's interesting too, because I was on another podcast in the States, and it's like such a different animal in the States. And as soon as it was posted, I had maybe like 1,000 followers just from that one podcast, and it was all realtors from the States. And I'm like, okay, so there's something here. And if, I have 100 messages maybe after that, it was very interesting to read them all. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think I'll ever do like the Grant Cardone thing where you get the course and then you've got a team of salespeople that are selling you on it. I think it would be more of like, hey, let a landing page ad run. Whoever wants it, and maybe put it in a Linktree link. You know what I mean? It's not something that I would want to push on people. It's just, it's there. And maybe we do a webinar once a month, something like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And then, eventually if you actually saw, massive potential in it, why not just scale it?
It's just my style. I'm so,
you're laid so back. You're like, you're laid back.
It's like, look, and new team members come on and say like, can I put my own logo on my for sale sign? I'm like, I don't care. As long as you're hitting your goals, you're bringing in sales, I'm not going to bother you about anything. You're not doing that, that's when we have a different conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of want to get into like some juicy real estate stories. Like, what was the most expensive home you've sold? Crazy like transaction story, maybe first sale ever. Anything you can give me there? Yeah. So highest sale I think it's only been $3 million. So it's like, and we don't really have a lot of much higher sales than that in Niagara. Although my teammate Evan and Jesse, they sold like a $5 million house, 5.25. So like they've done some bigger numbers than but I've been able to do those types of sales consistently. So I mean, I guess the crazy, my first listing was it was 3.5 million. We ended your very first one.
Yeah.
How?
It was actually a referral from a friend or a family. And it was the list price, and if they're watching this, I have told them this, but the list price was just way too high. And I had taken it on as the third realtor who tried to sell it. So already you're climbing out of a hole. And, after 2 years of trying to sell it, because this is before the big boom of 2017. This is before the big boom of 2019 or 2022, 2021, 2020. Like this, you sign agreements for a year because that's how long it might take. We ended up selling it. I sold it to my own buyer. And, we made sure that, hey, like there's no home inspection. It was his idea. So I made him sign off on that. And, the house was over 105 years old. And we did our final walkthrough and he's like, oh, I noticed some water on the ground. And it wasn't any water for a house. And this is very surprising. So imagine this. My first listing takes us so long to sell it. I finally find a buyer. It's my own buyer and they don't close on the deal. Very embarrassing, but also very heartstring pulling for the sellers who went through so many emotions. They lived there their entire life. They had family born there. And now, the realtor that they trusted to get a deal done didn't get it done. It was later found out, I can't talk about it too much, but that buyer I don't think had any intention on closing at all because there was no water. There was no water. It was a stain from garbage bags that had been there for 40 years. And what we did is we ripped up the floor and all the plywood on the ground of a 100-year-old house completely dry. I mean, this house was built in 1910. Come on, right? You'd expect to see the whole thing melting, right? But so that was not necessarily a crazy story, but it was a very eye-opening introduction to the industry that anything can happen. And you know what? It taught me a lot. It taught me to have a higher pre-qualification process for my clients, especially over the 2 million mark. It taught me that if, you're going to double lend a deal, you should probably bring somebody else in on it with you. So now our team, we don't double lend any deal. We work together on it. We have 2 different representatives and we have our admin look over everything before it's even processed. And we actually sign paperwork. So before, they were both my clients and I was in a very tricky spot. And now I know not to do things like that. And again, like I said, we did find out that he probably had no intention of closing it anyways, but it's still not a position any realtor wants to be in.
Yeah, of course. Very interesting. I mean, a house that old going for what? You said 3 million?
Yeah, it was pretty close. Yeah.
I mean, that just seems like a kind of...
it was 5,000 square feet right in the heart of Agron Lake. Yeah.
I mean, fuck, bullshit water stain. Lost this guy a deal.
So we ended up selling it. We ended up selling it for a little less than what we had originally sold it for. So pending lawsuits, I guess.
Yeah. What I'm interested in now is, from the first sale to where you are now, I mean... You're making good money, you're killing the social media game. What's next for you? I mean, we've talked about, the book, maybe creating a course in the future, but like what's next maybe in terms of your team?
Yeah, exactly. So I got very lofty goals. Just met somebody this morning who would be a potential option to run the Fine Estates team brand in Muskoka. Because although we have an office there yet, right now, we don't have any representation of the actual team there yet. And then the goal is to get something in Simcoe and a few other locations. The goal is to, if I'm hiring you as a realtor on the team, I don't want you there in the same position a year from now. I want you to grow to a point where maybe you're taking on a mentorship role. Then you take on a VP of sales role. Then you open up your own office. So that's the goal. I want to open one more office for Revel this year. I want to position my team in a few different markets by the end of the year. And that's what we're kind of going to replicate year on year. By the time I've got, at least 10 or 15 Revels under my belt and, 10 or 15 markets, that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I mean, before we wrap this up, I'd love to actually touch on Revel too. I mean, they took you on as someone to recruit other realtors and kind of, communicate their brand more. Good
question. So as a first, communicate their brand. That's very, very interesting because through my social media, people thought I owned Revel. And people were coming to me asking me all these. I'm like, dude, what? I'm like, no, Ryan and Nikki put all this work in because this was before Ryan and Nikki were like super on social media. Like again, Niagara 5, 6, 7 years ago was a little behind the times, right? It's nothing to where it was now. And then Ryan and Nikki saw value in that. And anybody else would have said, look at this asshole, walking around thinking he owns Revel. I never perceived myself. I never did that. It was the perception because I was promoting it so much. So anyways, they said, look, Andrew, you're bringing in these people. Do you have any desire to, become like a director of recruitment? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I basically designed the role. I basically designed the role out of nowhere because that's the beauty thing about Revel. They're so forward thinking that they're willing to sit with a new realtor. I was a new realtor in the business plus a new realtor with the organization. And they're willing to sit with me and come up with a new role. Like that's how amazing Ryan and Nikki Cervelli are. And now they're doing it. That's how we're replicating so fast is because we want you to grow with the company, not stay stagnant. So that was the whole idea on how it started. But I don't do any like outgoing recruiting. I do what I do in terms of content creation and people come to me. And, it's been working well because that means that by the time people are coming to Revel, they already have a feel for the brand. They already know it. They've already determined in their mind if this is going to be a brand that works for them.
Very, very interesting that, I kind of maybe thought Revel hopped on the hype train after you gained like a lot of traction in the business, but they actually found you when you were young. Do you think they just saw like potential?
Oh, 100%. And Ryan is the guy that he's very humble. He doesn't recruit anybody. He's very similar to me. He's laid back. He cares about growth. He cares about systems. But for anybody who doesn't want to be involved, he doesn't have time for. And I've kind of replicated my mindset based on his. But it was actually Nikki who reached out, and it was just like, there's something going on here, it might be a good fit. And I was lying if I was not interested. I had already met with 2 other people from Revel, Emily Berry, and, I set up those types of conversations. And I bet you Nikki probably saw that, because every time I meet with somebody, I post it on social media. So there's no secrets. I'm not hiding and going and talking to different people. It's out in the open. And Nikki was like, you know what? I think there's a lot of potential in you. And and then that's how she said, just come to one of our events. And so I came to an event, and I was like, this really blew me away. And Nikki Saravelli was the one who saw the potential in what I could potentially have. And at the time, I took that as it took me a couple of years to really bring my head down to here. And it's only been maybe in the last 12 to 24 months that I've actually been like, oh, okay, I'm not as big as I thought I was. Maybe now I am. And I just took, it was just very funny. Although they were super nice and welcoming, I took it as like, oh, well, I must be really worth something. So I didn't really appreciate the role for a long time. And, now that I finally grew to a place where I can be humbled about everything, I've never even said that out loud. So it's very interesting.
Gems just getting dropped on the podcast today. Yeah. I'm not too sure. I mean, before we wrap this up, do you have any last kind of words of advice for anyone watching?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is I said this on a recent podcast, and I think it kind of got blown out of proportion and the context was missing. 90% of the people out there in your industry, there are going to be a lot of noise, a lot of chatter, a lot of advice is going to be given to you. Don't listen to any of them. And I'm not saying because it's not that 90% is not good at what they do. What I'm saying is that there's only going to be 10% of the people in your business industry that you're going to want to actually model your business after. Because it's not enough, as we said before, to just say, oh, I want to be a salesperson in the real estate industry for everything. It's not enough anymore. You've got to be niche. That's why I look at all these products that come out. Look at all these companies. They're all geared towards one specific thing. I make honey, organic, vegan peanut butter. That's what I make, right? Think about how easy it is as a company to sell that, because that's all you do. And it's the same thing in real estate. And it's the same thing when you're trying to find your mentor. The reason why I say 10% and not 1%, sorry, 10% and not 1% is because that 10% will run their business differently. So you've got to reach out to multiple people, but just don't waste all your time focused on, what an average realtor will post in a Facebook group, because a lot of it's crap.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. Andrew Perrie, man, huge thanks for coming on. I know you're a super busy guy. You made time. I appreciate it. From, Rockstar, DUI to taking over the real estate game. This guy, I mean, huge legend. Definitely love watching your content. Look up to you. So yeah, I appreciate it. And see you guys on the next episode of Sell with Belle. And it's going to be a good one. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode.